What is up, dudes? Lady dudes, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. My name's John, and today we're doing a witchcraft let's talk about video. I did this with Evil Eye. I've done this with a bunch of archetypes that I like before, where we pretty much just go through the archetype as a whole once we know all the cards that have been announced for the new deck build pack, and then we just talk about the archetype in general. So I've done all the news videos as these cards came out, but I never really took the time after to look at them as a whole and think about it and give my overall thoughts on everything. I just gave you my reactions in the moment to the cards being released. So this will be my overall reactions to everything. We're going to start by going through all the cards that we have for the archetype, all 13, and then I'll give some last notes at the end on what I'm thinking. Weaknesses, strengths, flaws, what I think the deck should have been, and what I expect from this deck coming up. So, as far as the monsters go, we'll start there. We have 3 lower level monsters. They share one similar effect. That first effect is during the main phase. As a quick effect, you can tribute them and then discard any spell from hand to special summon a witchcraft monster straight from the deck, except for the one you tributed, of course. So, this effect is decent, I think. The biggest flaw is that Ash Blossom is the most common hand trap in the game, and this is ashable. So, you can possibly neg 2 if your opponent has Ash, and that's the biggest flaw, but it's still solid of pulling out whatever kind of witchcraft monster you need. The big ones actually are decent. I just hate that they're in the main deck. But yeah, that's a pretty solid effect. They all share that. Schmidt is my favorite one because she's also 1800 attack, and if you don't know, one of my favorite things about certain archetypes is if they have built-in beat sticks. I love just built-in beat sticks where if you're playing it, like look at 2 of the best 3 decks probably are like Altergeist and Striker. She just beats over both those decks. So like in a super simplified game state against those decks where both players have exhausted their resources, you can just beat them over, which is pretty cool. And all the low-level witchcrafts also have a second effect. Schmidta's is that you can banish her from the graveyard to send any witchcraft card from deck to graveyard. It's actually pretty good. We'll get to why that's actually solid in the future in a couple minutes here. So there's Schmidta. She's my favorite one by far. We also have Witchcraft Pottery here. This is a level 2 with 2000 offense, 0 attack. So big booty, low offensive capabilities. That same first effect to tribute, to discard, to special. But then we also have her second effect that says if you have no cards in your hand, Infernities, what? You can banish this card from your graveyard to target one witchcraft card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. This one's okay. I mean, I think it's a fine effect, but the fact that you have to have no cards in hand, which actually does not happen super all the time. It does happen, for sure, but it's not like I always just drop my whole hand. It's not like that, especially since you get the spells back like every turn. So it's an okay effect. It's fine. A nice little recursion effect, but nothing crazy. Then we move to Witchcraft Pittore, or Pittor. Same first effect as per usual. 1000 attack, 1500 defense. Nothing crazy, level 3. Her secondary effect, though, is you can banish her from the graveyard to draw 1 card. Then you can send any witchcraft card from your hand to the graveyard. But if you don't have any witchcraft cards to send, you have to banish your entire hand. So there's no reason to activate this first effect, or her second effect, if you don't already have a witchcraft card in hand. Because, like, why are you going to risk banishing your whole hand like that? That's messed up. But if you do, it can be a nice little dig 1 card deeper and a very, very miniature Saryuja effect here, right? Which is pretty cool. So she is the last of your low-level monsters there. So level 2, level 3, level 4. We don't have level 1, so I would expect that as support in the future. As far as the high-level ones, we have Witchcraft Edel to start us off. She's 2000 attack, 2300 defense, so pretty beefy stat-wise. Her first effect. During either player's turn, you can discard any spell card, then special summon 1 witchcraft monster other than herself from your hand. It's from the hand. You can tribute this card, then target 1 spellcaster monster in your graveyard and special summon that monster. I do like that that's generic if you do ever end up, playing this archetype with another spellcaster archetype, because there is a little bit of synergy there, you'll see. To revive any spellcaster was actually kind of okay. Biggest problems for this card, it doesn't get itself out of the hand, so if you don't special it straight from deck, it's probably just stuck in your hand for the whole duel. Huge minus. The first effect doesn't actually plus you at all. It just moves a card from hand to the field, so it's not actual advantage. And the secondary effect is a 1-for-1 as well. So there's no advantage to gain with this card. It just helps with awkwardness in the deck. That's about it. I love her design, but I think her effects are mediocre. Then we move to Witchcraft Heine, or Heine. I hope it's Heine. Hell yeah. She is one of your 2 main boss monsters. So she is 2400 attack, so pretty solid, 1000 defense, whatever. Her first effect is kind of like a floodgate effect, or a protection effect, that says other spellcasters you control cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects. That's super relevant. There's a ton of targeting cards out there. She can be targeted, but your opponent needs to get through her before she can target your other monsters. So that's a nice little protection effect. Her second effect is the big one, though. As a quick effect, you can discard 1 spell card from your hand, then target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, and destroy it. It's targeting destruction, but it's a quick effect. Like, nobody complained about Dryden, even though he targeted and destroyed, because it's a quick effect, and he's so easy to summon that, like, you're like, you can't complain at that point. And she's kind of similar. She's pretty easy to get out with any of the low-level ones, and then you are just popping stuff every turn. So, really, really nice. I do like her. I just wish she was not a main deck monster. And then the other boss monster is Witchcraft Master Veer. 1000 attack, 2000 defense. You'll see why that 1000 attack doesn't really matter, though. During damage calculation, if your spellcaster monster battles an opponent's monster, you can reveal any number of spells in your hand with different names, and then that spellcaster gains 1000 attack or defense for each card revealed until the end of the turn. So all you need to do is reveal 2 spell cards with different names, and she becomes 3000, 4800 defense, 3000 attack, 4000 defense, and it works for any spellcaster. It's a hard once per turn, so you can't just buff multiple things multiple times, but you can make her pretty big, and you can make other stuff pretty big too, depending on the situation. So I like that you can use it offensively to break boards. You can use it defensively if your opponent's trying to attack into you for any silly reason. And then as her second effect, she has a quick effect that says you can discard a spell to negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. This is pretty strong. It's just a straight-up negate. Everything discards, not a big deal. You get your spells back. That's a pretty strong little just negate right there. Both are hard ones for turns. But yeah, I like her a lot. And again, I wish both of these were not main deck monsters, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a little bit. So then we move to the spells. We start with Witchcraft Creation. This is your best spell by far, and it's really just a nice consistency card. It just says, add a Witchcraft monster from deck to hand. Great. You only have 3, so it's really nice to have a card like this to just help consistency and being able to see one of your Witchcraft starters every time. And then she has a second effect, where during your end phase, if you control a Witchcraft monster and this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card back to your hand. Whoa, that's pretty cool. So pretty much how this works is, first things first, is that this card says you can activate one of this card's effect and only once that turn. So what that means is you can either use this first effect to search, or you can use this discard effect, or not a discard, you can use like a Witchcraft monster to discard it, then you'll get it back on the end phase using its secondary effect. So it's a hard one to turn, but this is also any of your end phases. So you could literally use this card this turn, and then on your next end phase, after this, like that first turn, it can still come back if you didn't activate another copy, which is pretty nice that it isn't just like dead after that first turn. So that's the whole point of these spells, is they all have that like recursion effect. So literally every turn you're supposed to be getting back like 1 or 2 to your hand, and it's going to feel like impossible for your opponent to keep up with that advantage, because your opponent's top decking 1 card every turn, you're top decking 1 card, but you're also getting to 1 or 2 cards on your end phase as well, making it very hard for your opponent to keep up in more grindy duels. So yeah, Witchcraft Creation, very good. Witchcraft Sabotage is the next one. This pretty much is Monster Reborn, saying target 1 Witchcraft in your graveyard and special summon it, and then it has that same recursion effect. Pretty solid as well, especially since the little ones tribute themselves to activate, to like turbo you into your boss monsters, so they end up in grave like really early, turn 1, and that's my thing, is I don't like playing reborn spells in decks that can't put monsters in the grave turn 1. This deck can, so I do like this card in here as well. The next one is Witchcraft Collaboration. This says target a witchcraft monster you control. This turn, if it can make a second attack during each battle phase, and if it attacks, your opponent cannot activate spell and trap cards until the end of the damage step. This is another pretty cool card. I don't think I'd ever play it more than one. I maybe played it one just for specific duels where I'm really trying to go in on the battle phase, but that's about it. Has the same recursion effect, which is nice, but maybe I'd play one, probably none, I would assume. And then like the worst card in the archetype is Witchcraft Draping. Target spells and traps your opponent controls up to the number of witchcraft monsters you control and return them to the hand. That's it right there. I mean, it doesn't even matter how many, it just returns it to hand. Oi. Maybe you could play this in the side deck for like specific matches against like back row decks, but man, this card is just so underwhelming. If this popped, if this card popped, it'd be so clean, but it doesn't, so what are you going to do? And then it has the same recursion effect as the others. Doop, doop. Then we move to the two continuous spells, which are very interesting for the archetype. We have Witchcraft By Street. Here's the first one. It says, the first time each witchcraft monster you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect each turn, it is not. So, what I like about this is it's not even like the first witchcraft that would be destroyed is not. It says every witchcraft, the first time each one. So your opponent can try to attack one, safe. Attack another, safe. They have to attack one twice, and even if they went to the other one, they have to attack that one twice to kill it. So I really do like that. That is really nice that it's all of them. And it's just nice. Destruction is still around. There are obviously other outs, but usually that takes resources to out things that like without destruction. And at some point, like if you're grinding really hard and you're just putting more and more on board and this is staying on board, your opponent's going to run out of ways to spin, to bounce, to banish, to do that kind of stuff. They're going to have to start using destruction at some point. Most decks at least. So also keep in mind, both of the other effects for this card are hard once returns and only once that turn, which means you can only pick one to use each turn. First effect says, if a witchcraft monster you control would discard a card to activate an effect, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. That's pretty nice. Like because you're probably worried that like, oh, like it's a continuous, but like you need to discard spells for the deck to work, but this works. This discards instead, so that works. Good. And then the other effect says, during your end phase, if you control a witchcraft monster and this card is in your graveyard, you can place this card face up in your spell and trap zone. So instead of, and it's literally the same exact recursion effect as the other ones, except it places itself back into the zone instead of going to your hand, which is really nice for this one because that protection effects gets made live again, right? And if you do have the low level ones that can quick effect discard to special from deck, this card is already up on the field and it can be used as that discard fodder as well. So really nice card. This one's a little less good, but I think I'd still play it. Once per turn, if a spellcaster monster you control destroys an opponent's monster by battle, draw one card. Not crazy, it relies on the battle phase, but it can, like, if it's all in the field for the whole duel, this card can definitely end up generating you a ton of advantage in a duel. And then the other two effects are the same exact as the other one. You can discard this from, like, you can send this card from field to pretty much instead of discard for a witchcraft monster's effect, and also it can also set it back to your field face up if you control a witchcraft on the end phase. So that's really good as well. Then the last card for the archetype is Witchcraft Masterpiece, which is the only trap card for the archetype, which is kind of weird. It's interesting. I wouldn't say it's terrible. I think right now it's terrible, but I don't know yet. So first things first. If you control a witchcraft monster, target one spell in either graveyard, and add one card with the same name from your deck to your hand. Okay, interesting. Also, you can banish this card and any number of spells from your graveyard, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, to special summon one witchcraft monster from your deck whose level equals the number of spells banished to activate this effect. Now, I'll tell you right now this card is terrible. But, as I said earlier, we have a level 2, a level 3, a level 4, a level 5, a level 7, and a level 8. Which means the two main levels we're missing in between there are level 1 and level 6. So, assuming we get a level 1, obviously this is assuming, we get a level 1 as support in the future at some point, then this card only needs to banish one spell to special it straight from deck, which is actually pretty nice as like an extra thing when you're already searching with the first effect, making this card overall a +1. A slow +1, but a +1. And the first effect is interesting too. One of the best applications I could really think of this is like if you open this with Pot of Extravagance. You literally Pot of Extravagance to draw 2, already a +1. Extravagance goes to grave. You set this, then on your opponent's turn you activate this to add another Pot of Extravagance to your hand for next turn, a +1 again, and then on your turn after your opponent's turn, you banish this card from the graveyard banish this card and the Pot of Extravagance, because Pot of Extravagance doesn't do anything in grave, to special summon that level 1 straight from deck. While we don't have a level 1, I'm not banishing 2 spells, because at that point you probably almost for sure one of them's going to be one of the witchcraft spells, and you just want to keep those in circulation for the whole duel, right? You're not trying to mess around with that. I'm not trying to banish my spells because I need them to continuously be coming back to my hand to load me up. So that was like the main application I could think of this card, Pot of Extravagance. But other than that, nothing good right now until we get like a level 1 monster. And it's a trap, so it's so slow. Anyway, that is all the cards for the archetype. My biggest concerns for the deck are, first things first, is consistency, because our boss monsters are in the main deck and they don't get themselves out of the hand, which means if you draw either of these, they're complete bricks. Complete bricks. It's terrible. So that's probably the worst thing. And when I said I wish these were extract monsters, is my best idea was that these should be fusions and work like Thunder Dragons almost, where they say like you can special summon this on top of you can fusion summon this with an alternate way, and that alternate way being tributing a witchcraft monster and discarding a spell from hand. So it's technically a 2-for-1, so you're technically minusing 1, but you're minusing 1 for a boss monster, and that boss monster ain't clogging up your main deck, because I'm gonna feel obligated to almost play 2 copies of each of these, and with that many copies of those, I'm gonna see those in the hand, which means I'm gonna want to play EDL2, making our total count of like monsters I don't even want to see 5. I'm playing 5 cards I literally never want to see, which is always terrible for any deck. Playing 5 Garnets like that. But if they were fusions like that, I think this deck is completely different, and we're actually like on a whole nother realm of like fluidity and actual like solid stuff for the deck, because that can't be Ash. Which is my next concern, is that like your main play, if you can't tribute these girls to special summon your boss monsters from deck, and Ash Blossom negates these, which is the most popular hand trap in the game, you probably lose, because you're minusing 2 right there. Like, you probably lose that duel straight up. So that's tough as well. The number 1 hand trap in the game just beats your main play every time. Whereas if these were extra deck monsters and you were just special summoning for the extra deck, Ash don't hit that. Ash doesn't hit that at all, so you're just like fine. You're totally fine. So I think this is poorly designed in that fashion. As far as the spells go, I think the spells are actually really well designed. I think that recursion effect is like perfectly balanced. You can't use both in the same turn, so you can't just use one and get it back, so you can't use 3 spells and get all 3 spells back in the same turn. You have to wait until your next end phase to get it, so it's very slow, but you can't just be plussing off that. Like, you're literally special summoning spellcasters and searching spellcasters and literally ending your turn with all those spells still in your hand. That's not okay. But I think the way they did do it is very okay. I think the nerfs are perfect to help balance out these cards. I like these continuous spells. I'd probably play 1 of each. Honestly, my spell line would probably be like 1, 1, none, none, 2 or 3, and 3. So you're playing a good amount of them. And maybe you play like Foolish Burial Goods to just load your graveyard, but with these, like, turn 1 as fast as you can, so that you're just going to start getting that recursion as soon as possible. But yeah, I feel like that's the biggest problem with the deck, is that if these don't resolve, you lose. If you draw these, you lose. And I actually like the spells. I'm not going to complain about the spells, but that's the biggest problem, is with the monsters. Hopefully they get an extract monster. Hopefully they just get like a Link 1 that's busted. That's like the only thing you can really, like, I don't even know how they fix this. Like, they can't go back and make these now fusions like that work that way, but what do they do? Like, main deck decks. Like, if you're not a deck specifically like True Draco that does not need the extra deck at all, specifically because your mechanic is so good in your main deck, you can't just, Konami, you can't make decks with no extra deck anymore. Oy, you're killing me. But guys, let me know what you think about this archetype. I think we may see this a little bit on the local and regional stint. It depends on how well people are able to mix with this deck. Like, apparently a lot of archetypes can actually do a little bit of melding with this deck, but it depends how much exactly. So we gotta wait to see that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this a little bit in local and regional play, topping there. But I don't really expect this, at least right now, the way it is right now, to be topping any YCSs or anything. But yeah, this is nothing but rogue at the moment, I would say. Let me know what you think. You know, let me know down below how good you think this deck really is, and you know, I'd love to have a conversation about that. I still love this archetype. I love the artwork. I'm still going to pick it up until hopefully we get some support for it. I think this archetype is too appealing to too much of the Yu-Gi-Oh fan base for Konami to just ignore it after this, to not give it support ever. I think we will for sure see support for this in the future, and hopefully it's good enough to put this deck at least on like the tier 2 map. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to the video if you want to see more Let's Talk About videos going over whole archetypes in one fell swoop like this. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Peace, guys.